with our Westerly sampler set, Quilt As You Go block of the month. And we're gonna make block number, this is effectively gonna be block number 8. So I have marked my 12.5-inch square. And now I'm marking my 4 points inside that square. My 4 diagonal points, so I should have my 4 north, south, east, west, and then I should have my diagonals going on. Again, I use the crosshair square. You do not have to use a crosshair square. You can do it with a ruler if you'd like. This time we are going to use Spinifex number 4. Spinifex number 4. We're going to do all the work from inside the ruler on this particular block, so you don't need the thumbtack. I'm going to bring my thread up right in the dead center of this block. So I'm starting dead center, and I'm going to do a petal. Stop at the center. I'm going to rotate 90 degrees so that I'm at the east side now. Rotate 90 degrees, and now I'm going south. I'm making sure that the center line on my ruler is lined up with the drawn line, and I'm stopping back in the center each time. 90 degrees again. Now I'm facing west, and now I'm going to fill in the ones in between. I'm going to do the diagonal lines. So I'll have just a slight overlap on my petals. Always make sure I'm stopping in the center. When you do this way, when you skip and do every other one, it kind of helps your sandwich avoid getting distorted. And especially since we're not using the pin and things could be moving around on this one if we weren't careful. Doing my last one, so now I've made 8 petals, and I'm back in the center. I could travel out. I choose not to. I choose to raise my thread. There's an awful lot of stitch in there already, so I choose to raise my thread here. I'll pull this up. I'm going to trim it down to a reasonable length. So that's the center of my block. Now, what shall we do next? Well, we are going to head up the diagonal line, and you're going to start right at the seam, or it's not a seam, I guess, the stitch line, right at the stitch line. And I'm bringing my thread up. Would help if I had my ruler on. Bringing my thread up. And I put my ruler down. And now I'm going to make a partial flower. So I can't do 8 because I'd run over these. But I can do, let's see, what am I going to get? I'm going to get 1, 2, 3, 4, looks like I'm going to get 5. So I'm going to go my center one, which is lined up on that center line. I'm going to come down. I'm going to rotate over. Can't see up the top there. There we go. I'm going to rotate over so there's a diagonal line on your, and I got tape right over the top of it, which makes it hard to see, but there's a diagonal line on your ruler right here, and I'm lining that diagonal line up with the straight line, and it'll make overlap just like the center. So I'm coming out, back to the center, and now I'm going to rotate it again until that one. which is the one going straight out from the center, is on that center line. And I'm going to come down here, and I'm coming right back to the center. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So the first one is going to be this one, that one right there. And then the next one, that straight line coming out from the center, I'm going to do that one. Right straight back to the center. Okay. Bringing up my bobbin thread again because I don't want to do all this traveling. Okay, so now I have kind of half a flower sitting on top of my first flower. And again, to avoid distortion, I'm going to come all the way 180 degrees. So I'm going to rotate this, come down here. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Pull up that thread. Okay, I have the center line at the top of the fat part of the petal is lined up. I'm stitching out. And then let me count over, see if I can make this easier on you guys. So from the center line, I'm gonna go 1, 2, 3, the fourth diagonal line over from the center. The fourth diagonal as they're going like this. Fourth diagonal line from the center. Coming out. And now I'm doing the one that is perpendicular to the center. Now I'm rotating over the other way. I'm doing the fourth one going the other way. And now I've got the perpendicular line lined up. And again, bringing up my bobbin thread. And now I'm going to do the other two sides. So I've gotten my center and these two sides done. And now the next thing I'm going to do is these two sides. You don't have to watch me. I'll be back in just a minute. So I finished doing my 5 petals on each side of my diagonal line. And I may have cut those threads too short to bury, and that is not good. I did. Okay. So guess what? Those aren't getting buried. Chop. Whoops. Okay. I'm burying these threads to get them out of the way. It is always easier to stop as you're going and get these threads out of the way so that you're not having to do them all at once at the end. So let me get these out of the way, and then we're going to go to the north, south, east, west lines. So we just finished our diagonal lines. Now we're going to move to the north, south, east, west lines. On these north, south, east, west lines, we're going to try not to run over the previous flower petals. On these, I kind of just, we're overlapping. But it'll get kind of messy over time if we keep just running over and running over and running over. So we don't want to do that. We don't want to get messy. So on these next ones, we're going to try to travel when we hit a previous petal. We're going to go around the outside edge of the previous petal. So again, we are going to the north, south, east, west side this time. So the straight ones, not the diagonal ones. I'm going to bring up my thread right at the diagonal of where these two petals intersect. Okay, with my ruler. That would be helpful. Okay. All right, so I'm going to seat that ruler, and this time I'm keeping it marked with the straight. I'm going to go around. I'm going to rotate just like I did before, so now I'm taking that line that's really hard to see. I'm lining up right there. And now when I come down here, you'll see that I could run right straight through that petal, or I can go around it. And then it'll look like these other petals are laying on top of this one. So I'm going back to the center. And I'm going to take that line that I've been using. And again, I'm going to stop when I get here. And I'm going to go around that petal. And then I'm going to come to the center. And I'm going to bring up my thread. Okay. So now I have this little bunch, just 3 petals. I've buried my thread so that it's out of the way. And you can see how I just traveled around there and there to make it look like these are laying on top of that. So, okie dokie, now we are on the final step for this block. So we're going to do on the diagonals again. Now we're making a 3rd set of petals, and it's going to be another 5 going out on the diagonal on top of the 2nd set. So I have my thread brought up right at the intersection of my diagonal line and the seam, or the stitching, at the top of my flower petal. I'm doing the center one first, just like I did before. Rotating over to that same line. And now I'm rotating over again, and now I'm going to do like I did with the petals on the straight lines. I'm going to travel back in over my previous petals, and that'll look like the petals are laying on top of these. Back to the center. Okay, now I'm going to come over here, and I'm taking that diagonal line back out, just like I did on the previous ones. To the center. The exact same way we did it on the sides. And then I'm traveling around my stitch line, so that it looks like those previous ones are laying on top of this one. get back to the center and raise my bobbin thread. Ooh, can't get hold of it this time. There we go. Raise my bobbin thread, bring my thread up. Okay, we'll cut those off to a reasonable length and bury those. Right in there. And that is what that should look like. So I've done my center petal first, then the second one, and then on the third one, I stitched around the petals in the previous layers. Rotated over, did the second one on the left and the third one, and stitched around my petals from the previous layer. So it looks like these are laying on top of those. Now I'm going to do this on the remaining 3 diagonal lines, and then that block is done. Hope you enjoyed this. Remember, keep practicing, practicing, practicing. Practice makes perfect. Don't do this on your best fabric right off the bat. Do this on some scrap fabric. Try it a couple of times. The more you do it, the better you get. The more practice you have, the more comfortable you'll feel with it. And remember, drop in those shoulders and relax. This is fun if you let it be. We'll see you next month for a big block. See you then.